When and why should you pursue an order for protection? Since the mid 1980s, Illinois has had the Illinois Domestic Violence Act that created this idea, this statute, this remedy of an order for protection. Why? Well, frankly, domestic violence, right? The scourge that exists of kind of partners, family members, abusing and harassing, kind of former partners, people they may share a child with. And I mean, I know just as somebody who's practiced family law a while and just an observer of kind of family relations and demographics that I think this is still true that the largest really percentage of murders are committed by sort of a partner, a domestic relationship, a family relation. So this is a big problem, domestic violence. Now, let me also say that as somebody who's been in the family law space for 20 years, orders of protection are often abused and kind of gotten sort of carelessly and unnecessarily. I find because first, you don't have to give notice to the other party, and also there's no filing fee, like let's say a divorce case. Somebody has to pay currently $388 to file that case, whereas, excuse me, in order of protection, there's no fee. So I find that they're often abused. And I would also say that they're not that effective generally. I'm going to talk about when they are effective. Right. I mean, I read all the time about people who have been abused or even killed who had an order of protection in place. And, at some level, right, it's just a piece of paper. If somebody's a criminal, if somebody's going to be violent, a piece of paper might not be that effective. Now, let me bridge on sort of what remedies you can get under an order of protection. And I'm going to highlight the ones that I very strongly feel are the good reasons, the effective reasons to get an order of protection. There are actually 18 different remedies under the Illinois Domestic Violence Act that you can get. These are 4 or 5 I'm going to highlight that I think are really useful remedies. First, you can get exclusive possession of a home, right? Share a home with a spouse and one of the spouses is an abuser. I can get my husband or wife kicked out of our shared home, even if the other spouse owns the home or if it's jointly owned. I can get that person kicked out. I can get exclusive possession. Second, I can get a stay away remedy. Stay away from me, right? They can't come to the home. We've already talked about a little bit, but you can also get kids' school kind of included. So they have to stay away from kids' school. I can get my place of employment on there. So there's a stay away part of it that I find to be effective. You can get possession of kids. You can get temporary custody of kids. You can get somebody's parenting time stopped. That can be effective, those child-related remedies. And then lastly, you can get possession of somebody's firearm. So what are some of the remedies you can get? And I was highlighting those 4. I find those to be the real strong ones that are particularly effective. Now, who can you get an order of protection against? The law defines and talks about family and household members. If I'm just walking outside of my office right now and somebody starts harassing me or punches me in the face, there might be some kind of a criminal violation there, but just some random person, I cannot get an order of protection against. It has to be people who are a family or household member, meaning, and it's actually a broader definition than you might think, but it's my spouse, a former spouse, a blood relationship, somebody I share a dwelling with, child in common, that sort of thing. So it's somewhat obvious, but it is sort of that family household member group. It isn't just kind of any person. So what are some of the remedies? Who can you get it against? What are the reasons or the bases for which you need to prove to get an order of protection? Well, the generic ones are essentially it's abuse. And under abuse, physical abuse is a big one, obviously. Harassment's a big one as well. Physical abuse, I think, is self-evident, right? If I have a black eye and my husband or wife did it, that's physical abuse. Harassment, just a really, right. I tend to see it's a volume of communication is what a judge is going to look at, and also kind of the tone of it, right? If I'm being called, just terrible, vile names, showing up, calling somebody a lot at a place of employment is also a big red flag in terms of what's harassment. And then lastly, I'll tell you, concealment of a child is also within kind of that abuse idea. Quite honestly, when I'm doing orders of protection, probably the most common time I'm doing an order of protection is actually when somebody takes the children, as I call them. They do a grab and run, and now it's like, hey, picked up the kids from school when I wasn't allowed, it wasn't my time, and now I took off to Indiana with the kids. So those are some of the reasons or bases that you would need to prove. You would need to have evidence to get an order of protection. And then lastly, when, or sort of what are the circumstances sort of legally when you can get an order of protection? Now, broadly, there's what you call an independent order of protection, right? You have nothing else going with this family or household member, and you just file an order of protection, a petition for order of protection just on its own, right? That's one scenario. The other scenario is, right, in my world, I'm dealing in divorce and child custody cases really exclusively. So it is also fairly common that somebody within one of those cases, divorce, custody case, would file a petition for an order of protection within that divorce case, for example. And what else on the when, as I mentioned, you can get it without notice to the other party. So that's part of it, but that's only an emergency order of protection. That would be a very short-term order of protection. If you want a longer 2-year or more order of protection, then that other person, the alleged abuser, would need to get served, and he or she is entitled to a hearing. So I don't want to go on much farther, but I hope I have answered and given you a broad outline on when and why you should pursue an order for protection.